So today I want to talk about emotional intelligence and self-awareness. So let's go over some theory first. The researcher that coined the term emotional intelligence is David Goleman, and he's written several books about the topic. And he divides emotional intelligence into 4 different core competencies. The first of those competencies being self-awareness, so knowing what you're feeling and why you're feeling it. The second one is emotional management, so being able to handle distressing emotions. And of course, every emotion has a function, so this isn't repressing those emotions. It's about being able to listen to those emotions and taking effective action. The third component is empathy, so being able to understand what another person is feeling. And the fourth component is putting all of those together into skilled relationship, so social skills. And a question that David Goleman was asked that I really liked his answer to, he was asked, are women more emotionally intelligent than men? And what he talked about is that women tend to be better at empathy, so knowing what another person is feeling, and they tend to be better at social skills, so keeping things feeling good between a group of people. And men tend to be better at self-confidence, especially in groups. And men also tend to be better at handling distressing emotions. However, if you look at leaders in the top 10%, so the real high performers, there is no difference between the men and the women on any of these variables. So as leaders grow and develop, they tend to develop strengths in the areas where they may not naturally have been given those strengths by our culture. And this was really good for me to hear, and it led me to reflect on where are the areas where culture has given me some natural strengths, and where are the areas of emotional intelligence where I can put some intentional effort in growing my skills and developing my skills. All right, so now that we've got a little bit of the theory down, I wanted to share with you 5 different things that I work with on my journey toward emotional intelligence. And the first one is labeling. So this is literally just putting a 1-word label on the emotion that I'm feeling. Like, oh, this is shame. Oh, this is sadness. Oh, this is anger. And researchers have done some very clever research on this. They put people into fMRI machines, which is a brain scan machine, and they showed them images of, possibly distressing things. And when somebody's shown an image of something that's distressing, the amygdala, which is the part of the brain that's the fear center, the amygdala lights up and gets activated. And what researchers noticed was that when the participants were asked to put this 1-word label on that emotion, like fear, shame, panic, whatever the emotion was, the amygdala was actually inhibited, so less activated. And what got activated was the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of our brain that's responsible for logic. So simply by putting this 1-word label on the emotion, we're able to activate the logical part of our brain, which helps us to respond to that emotion more effectively. And this is something that I use all the time. It's one of my first go-tos, is just that self-awareness, like identifying what I'm feeling, because I know neuroscientifically it's been proven that this will help me handle the emotion more effectively. Another thing that I work with that's been super helpful for me is kind of a little mantra. This feeling is real, but it may not be true. And so I kind of repeat this to myself. The feeling is real, but it may not be true. In the sense that, sometimes I'm having a shame spiral about work. I'm not doing enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not a valuable team member, kind of this emotion coming around for me. And I work with this mantra. You're saying the feeling is real. The feeling is definitely real. I feel it in this moment. I'm having the feeling is real, but it may not be true. It may not be true that, I'm worthless or that I'm not contributing. To really just, again, activating that logical part of the brain and starting that inquiry of, hey, this may not be true. Another thing that I work with that I really like is the mantra, this hurts because I care. This hurts because I care. If I didn't care, it wouldn't hurt. So I was literally just using this last week. I had a situation, I have a friend who's queer, and I accidentally outed them to another friend. And I had this whole shame spiral of like, oh my God, maybe this wasn't mine to share. Maybe, this person wouldn't be comfortable with me sharing the fact that they're queer with another person, kind of going into my own shame spiral of like, I pride myself on being a person that's safe for others, having integrity, creating this safe space. Like, oh my God, am I a bad person? I did this bad thing, shame spiral, shame spiral, shame spiral. And I was working with this mantra, this hurts because I care. If I didn't care, it wouldn't hurt. So doing that inquiry of like, why do I care? Oh, I care because I care about being a safe person. And then actually using that emotion as motivation to take the next step, which in this case was coming back into integrity by, cleaning up the situation, actually saying to this friend, hey, this was not mine to share. I apologize for sharing it. And these are the next steps that I'm going to take in the future. This is the commitment that I make to make sure that this doesn't happen again. So really using that emotion as motivation to take the next right step in order to handle the emotion. Another thing that I really like that's very related, I heard this on Brene Brown's podcast. She was doing an interview with Dr. Susan David, who wrote the book Emotional Agility. And she talks about, the quote is, every emotion is a signpost, either of something that we value or something that we need. And this has been a super good inquiry for me. Meaning like when I'm having panic, is this about something that I need? Like maybe I need a break. Maybe I need to take some time off. Maybe I need to do some self-care. Maybe I just need to do a 5-minute meditation. Like, is this about something that I need? Or is this about something that I value? For example, sometimes I'm having my freak out about work. And a lot of the times what's underneath that is that I really value being a good software engineer. I really value, being a good contributing member to my team. And so feeling underneath, kind of doing a little bit of that inquiry of what's underneath this emotion. Is this about something that I need or about something that I value? And then the last thing I want to share is that a lot of the things that I work with are around like, how do I handle this emotion most effectively? Like, how do I transform it? How do I change it into something that's more effective? And my co-facilitator, Gina, we run this mindfulness course together. She was kind of saying like, hey, Lise, sometimes you don't really need to change the emotion or transform it. Like sometimes it's okay to just be with the emotion, kind of go into the body, feel the emotion, and kind of say, this too is here. Because sometimes the mind is spinning and it's not necessarily capable of doing anything effective. And sometimes you don't really need to change the emotion. You just need to hold space for it to be there. Hold space, to feel whatever it is and say, this too is a part of my present moment experience. Alrighty, so now that I've shared with you a little bit about how I handle emotional intelligence in my life, I wanted to share with you this quote from Viktor Frankl. And the quote goes like this: between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. So this is the challenge that I invite you to take on in the coming week. Really noticing that space between stimulus and response and making a mindful choice in that moment of how you want to respond to the situation. Because there will be lots of stimuli that come up. Work is sometimes stressful, relationships are sometimes stressful, whether it's a romantic relationship, a friendship, a relationship with a child or a parent. There's lots of things in our lives that stimulate intense emotions. And simply starting with noticing this space between stimulus and response. Maybe not even necessarily starting to work with like, how do I want to respond to this? But just at first, maybe just noticing there is a space between stimulus and response. And when you feel comfortable noticing that space, maybe starting to work with maybe some of these mindfulness mantras, maybe some of the things that I shared, like labeling, like working with this feeling is real, but it may not be true. Maybe this hurts because I care. Maybe doing that inquiry that Dr. Susan David offered of this emotion is a signpost, either something that I value or something that I need. Or maybe like just disengaging from the mind if the mind is not being helpful and just, feeling the feeling in the body, kind of disengaging from the mind, coming into the experience in the present moment of this emotion, not seeking, to change it or transform it, holding space for it and saying this too. Or maybe any other range of things that you work with in your practice around emotional intelligence. So in this coming week, just working with this space between stimulus and response and feeling out for you, how do you want to respond to emotions? What feels right in your emotional intelligence practice? Thanks for watching, and I wanted to invite you to share in the comments if any of these tools that I shared particularly resonated for you, or if there's any other tools that I didn't mention that you work with in your emotional intelligence practice. And as always, if you're interested in meditating with me, please check out my playlist of guided meditations.